Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Rosemary, and in today's video I have part 4 of my 2023 dollar dupes from high-end retail stores. And this week we have Olive Atelier, the Los Angeles-based curator of objects with old souls, which they source from countries around the world like Turkey, India, France, and Greece, then present in bi-monthly one-day drops at their downtown LA warehouse. And now, much to the delight of their ever-growing fan base, they also offer an online drop, and pieces have also been seen at online retailers like Lulu and Georgia. Although the online options do now make Olive Atelier more accessible to those living outside the LA area, shipping costs, especially on heavier items, will come with a hefty price tag. Additionally, even though they do seek to offer their items at a fair price without extraordinary markups, their prices on many of their pieces may still be out of reach for most consumers. So let's see if we can get some of that Olive Atelier look, albeit without the authenticity, for less. My intention for this video was to do 4 pieces: a Turkish olive jar, a papier-mâché gourd, an aged wood pillar candle holder, and an aged wood riser. However, in working on the first project, the Turkish olive jar, I realized that needed to be a video in itself. Therefore, the gourd, candle holder, and riser will be featured in next week's video, so we can focus on making an authentic dupe of a Turkish olive jar, not just popular at Olive Atelier, but also many other high-end retailers. They come in many shapes, colors, and sizes, and to replicate larger versions, you can easily pick up pieces secondhand at thrift stores, yard sales, or online marketplaces, but since this is a dollar dupe video, I'll be focusing on the smaller options since smaller scale items are what is available there, but you can easily use these same paint techniques on the larger secondhand items to replicate the larger versions. Dollar Tree has 2 vases that are similar in shape to a couple of the smaller Olive Atelier pieces. The Jardin vase would be a great option for a dupe of this terracotta jar, and the Dollar Tree potbelly vase with its straight neck makes a great option for this smaller pitcher with handle. I opted to do the pitcher, but the paint technique will apply to both. First, I washed the vase and wiped it with vinegar to remove any oils or other residue. I also wanted to make a little handle, so I used some of this Dollar Tree modeling clay, slightly bent and stretched it so that it would nicely fit as a handle, and then left that to air dry. Next, I painted a base coat with a little chalk paint in the color hazelnut. For the base coat, it doesn't matter which direction you paint, so I paint it vertically since it's easier. Once covered, I set the vase aside to dry, and you really want this coat to dry thoroughly, so it's a good idea to leave it alone and do some other projects or chores, or even leave it overnight. To create the terracotta textured paint, I mixed Dollar Tree lightweight spackle plus a little pumpkin colored chalk paint and a little hazelnut colored chalk paint. I also mixed in a little water to improve the spreadability of the paint. But the neat thing is that once this paint dries and the water evaporates, all that texture will be completely intact. When applying the spackle paint coats of the paint, I did paint horizontally around the vase. And you can see how that mix of pumpkin and hazelnut paint plus the spackle gives a nice terracotta finish to the vase. I painted on one coat, let it dry, and then painted a second coat, letting it dry completely between the coats. I also painted the clay handle as well as the inside top of the vase with, again, 2 coats of the spackle paint. And then this is what it looked like after 2 coats, and you can see how that spackle paint really gives a great textured finish. And many of the terracotta vases do have a more rough texture like this, but the one I'm duping actually has a smoother finish, which I'll take care of once the paint is fully dry. For now, though, I do want to add a lip to the top of the vase. Now, I could do this with more of the modeling clay, but I find that building up the spackle paint around the top is another great option. And then once the paint was fully dry, I lightly sanded it with ultrafine 2020 sandpaper to reduce those ridges and smooth out that surface. After smoothing out the surface, I wanted to attach the handle, and I used both E6000 and caulk to do so. First, I put E6000 on both ends of the handle and placed it onto the vase where I had dry fitted it earlier. Next, I took the caulk and had the not so great idea of trying to apply it around the handle with my fingers. After making a hot mess, I came to my senses and used a craft stick as the applicator, pressing the caulk into the gaps between the handle and the vase. I then used water-dipped fingers to smooth out any clumps and also to clean up any excess caulk. From here, I placed the vase handle side up between 2 books for the caulk and glue to fully dry. And here is the picture once the glue and caulk have dried. Now, this handle is secure, but it is only decorative, so no picking it up by the handle and swinging it around the room. At this stage, I should have used more of the terracotta paint to touch up around the handle, but I was so excited to get to the next step, the drip coat, that I totally forgot. To make the drip, I again used the pumpkin and hazelnut paints, but since the drip on the original has a decidedly rosy hue, I also added a nice red in the color lacquer. Once the paints were mixed, I also added water to create a drip consistency. To apply the drip, I loaded my paintbrush and pressed the loaded brush onto the top half of the picture, allowing the paint to drip down onto the lower half. However, the shape of the vase, the painted texture, and the small brush size resulted in thin strips instead of the chunkier strips like on the original, but I decided to go with it and continued around the rest of the vase. And it's right here that I noticed that I forgot to do the terracotta paint touch-up around the handle. In order to get those chunky drips like on the original, I decided to join sets of the two thinner lines by adding the drip paint in between. Then I went back to do that terracotta paint touch-up around the handle. And since I had way more skinny drips than I needed, I went back with wet fingertips and smudged the lines into the terracotta base. This actually worked out well since it added some dimension to that base coat. Before doing the olive green top, I wanted to add some speckling at the top of the picture. So I took some chalk paint in the color truffle, and using a chip brush, I dipped it in the paint, then removed most of it so that when I pounced it on the picture, I would get thin, wispy lines of the paint. Somehow, I lost the footage, but to paint the top, I used a glazed medium and olive green colored craft paint in a 1-to-1 ratio. I have this large container from Lowe's, but you can pick up small bottles of glazed medium at the craft store in the craft paint section. At first, I actually used a ratio of 2 parts glaze to 1 part paint, but then quickly realized a 1-to-1 ratio was needed here, so I added some paint to make up the difference. I followed the original as a guide, mimicking the dips and waves at the bottom and making sure to paint the inside as well as the handle. Since I did end up going with a heavier paint to glaze ratio, I did have to go back and redo the brown speckling, again using the truffle paint on a dry chip brush. The lower portion of the picture also has some light-colored speckling and streaking, and for those I used a mixture of hazelnut and sandstone chalk paint and also a clean chip brush. I again dipped the brush into the paint and then dabbed off the excess and began pouncing the brush onto the lower half of the picture, making speckles, but then dragging the brush horizontally to also make some streaks. It's the tiny details like this that give the finished dimension and the piece an overall authentic look. Then to complete the piece and give the olive green topper a realistic high gloss glazed ceramic finish, I used Dollar Tree High Gloss Top Coat nail polish. Wherever there was green, I made sure to cover it with the high gloss polish, making sure to get along the inside as well as on the handle. And then here it is after the first coat, but I think a second coat will definitely seal the deal. And then I have one last final hack to recreate an authentic look Turkish olive jar. And if you saw my recent porch and patio makeover video, you may be familiar with this trick. Since I used it to create a white mineral patina on faux terracotta pots I made using cheap plastic pots from Target. And the secret ingredient? Cornstarch. It works great with the textured spackle paint finish, getting into all the grooves, and adheres well. I just sprinkle it on and rub it into the surface. Once it's uniformly spread, I go back and lightly remove the excess with a dry paper towel. You can even lightly spray with a matte varnish, as I did with my Target pots since I was using those for live plants, but it also stays pretty well if you just leave it alone, which is exactly what I'm going to do with this piece. And then here we have the final product, looking like it's been storing olives in Turkey for the last 100 years, or at the Atelier, getting ready for the next drop. It'll be our secret that it's a Dollar Tree vase, some paint, clay, and spackle. And then here it is next to the original inspiration piece. I'm not sure of the size of the original, but I believe it's actually smaller than the dupe. The price is also not clear, but best I can tell, the original is about $45. However, the price on the jars does seem to vary as each piece is unique. And this is just one of the many finishes for these types of jars, so please let me know in the comments if you'd like me to replicate another finish, and don't forget to check back next week to see how I made out with the other Olive Atelier dupes I will be attempting. In the meantime, you can click here to check out the high-end dupe playlist for more DIYs from your favorite retailers. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.